429 million ounces. That's how much silver is currently standing in open interest for the upcoming delivery cycle. Now compare that to 92 million ounces. That's the amount of registered silver available for delivery. 429 versus 92. That gap is not noise. That gap is pressure. And tonight, we're breaking down exactly what that means, structurally, mechanically, and realistically. No drama, no panic. Just the structure. What do these numbers actually mean? First, let's simplify this. Open interest represents the total number of active silver futures contracts. Each contract equals 5,000 ounces. When we say 429 million ounces in open interest, we're talking about the total paper exposure tied to futures contracts that have not been closed. Now compare that to registered inventory. Registered silver is metal that is eligible and available for delivery against futures contracts. Eligible silver exists in vaults, but it is not committed for delivery. Registered silver is, that distinction matters, because only registered silver can actually settle contracts if holders choose physical delivery. And right now, open interest represents hundreds of millions of ounces. Registered inventory sits around 92 million. That imbalance is the foundation of the tension. The delivery mechanism. Now let's talk about how delivery actually works. Most futures contracts never result in physical delivery. Historically, only about 1 to 2% of contracts stand for delivery. The majority roll forward or close before first notice day. So normally, this imbalance doesn't matter. But here's where it becomes interesting. If participation increases, if more holders decide to stand for delivery, the pressure moves quickly. Let's run a simple scenario. If just 20% of 429 million ounces stood for delivery, that's roughly 85 million ounces. Registered inventory is 92 million. That's nearly the entire registered supply if 25% stood. That exceeds available registered silver. Now, does that mean default? Not automatically, but it means inventory must move, eligible must convert to registered, metal must flow into vaults, or cash settlements increase. And each of those has implications. Why would more contracts stand? This is the real question. Why would delivery demand rise? 3 possible drivers. Industrial demand, tightening physical supply. Large entities choosing physical over rollover, growing distrust in paper leverage ratios. Silver is not just monetary, it is industrial, solar, EVs, electronics, defense applications. Industrial demand continues to absorb significant global supply annually. If supply chains tighten while futures exposure remains elevated, delivery pressure increases. And when that happens, warehouse dynamics matter. The paper versus physical ratio, let's zoom out. When open interest represents multiple times the amount of registered inventory, it highlights leverage. Paper-silver trades far in excess of available physical again. This is normal in futures markets. But leverage works both ways. When confidence is high, rollover is smooth. When stress rises, rollover decreases. And that's when structural gaps matter. The 429 meters versus 92 M figure is not a prediction, it's a structural ratio. And ratios tell you where fragility can appear. What happens if pressure builds? If delivery demand increases meaningfully, you could see rapid inventory conversions, increased lease rates, rising premiums in physical markets, temporary volatility in futures pricing. But it does not automatically mean collapse. Markets adapt, metal flows, participants hedge. However, the tighter the inventory cushion, the more sensitive the system becomes. And sensitivity increases volatility probability. That's the key takeaway. Why this is not panic content. This is not about predicting a squeeze tomorrow. This is not about saying the vaults are empty. It's about understanding mechanics. When open interest significantly outweighs registered supply, the system depends on normal behavior. As long as rollover remains dominant, pressure stays contained. If behavior shifts, pressure surfaces quickly. That's structural analysis, not headlines. Authority positioning silver does not announce its next phase loudly. It builds quietly in the structure. And right now, the structure shows a visible imbalance. 429 million ounces of paper exposure, 92 million ounces of registered metal. Whether that gap resolves smoothly or tightens into volatility depends on participation. If you want calm, structured silver analysis without panic headlines, subscribe, because we track structure, not noise. And the next phase rarely announces itself in advance. It simply appears in the data. I'll see you in the next breakdown.